Going live it takes a couple seconds for us to go live on Instagram. A slight delay, but that's okay. Alrighty, fabulous. So we're live. So welcome to another Inspiration Behind the Stories. I'm here with Vanessa Carlisle, the author of Take Me With You, and we're just going to jump right into it.
Okay, I'm happy to be here.
What was the moment that you said, oh my gosh, I have got to write this?
I was doing some work with an organization in Skid Row and found out about the story of the NFL stadium. And so this is a David and Goliath story. There's a period in which there was a huge fight about building this stadium. And a coalition of organizations and Skid Row residents, people who were living outside, won. And they did not build the stadium in downtown LA. And I knew that that story was just going to get like lost to history. And that felt so important to me to have some way of putting that story down.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Now, what first sparked this specific narrative of Take Me With You?
Yeah, I think my work, I'm a longtime sex worker, and my work has always been a big part of my writing. And this story started coalescing around the time that I was transitioning into doing more kink and dom work. And I was trying to take notes about what I was learning, and I was really overwhelmed by what a brave new world this was to me. And so I started conceiving of the idea of a character who transitions from other forms of sex work into kink work and then has these other big life issues that she's trying to manage and deal with, and the way that those relationships all can get intertwined and jumbled, especially in moments of crisis.
Wow. Now, you already basically inferred this, but just to expand upon it, why this story now?
It's fun to answer that question since this story was very much of its time when I first started working on it 10 years ago, but I actually think it's just as relevant now. I still work with an organization in the Skid Row area. I'm still down there all the time. If anything, the issues that were a major part of the second half of this book, those issues are even bigger. They're louder, especially after COVID. There's more going on down there. So people who are interested in getting a sense of what the fight for dignity for people who are homeless, houseless, living outside, residents of the Skid Row area, these are all terms we use, what that fight for dignity feels like and looks like, it's still happening in much the same way. Also, I think we're having a culture change in the way that we think and talk about sex work. And characters like Kindred, the main character of this book, is in many ways a voice for that change, right? Someone who is interested in having, not debating her humanity with anyone. She's just interested in being able to live her life and do her work. So these issues are still very present right now, I think.
Got it. Now, what were some of the questions that you were obsessed with as you were writing this story?
Hmm. I was obsessed with questions about gender and sexuality. I'm still obsessed with those questions about the way that labeling our gender and sexuality sometimes limits our imaginations. So this character, one of my mentors called the main character of this book. She said, "I love how she just has such a wide open libido." And so it's interesting to follow that. Like, what does it mean to be a person who has, a sort of a sexual life that feels unhindered by labels?
Mm.
Um, the book is very queer in that way, although that's not a huge, it's not browbeating in that. It's not, I'm not trying to make it impossible for straight folks to see themselves in the characters. So it's a queer book that's very welcoming and wide. So those are
Oh,
questions that I'm interested in, for sure.
what a stunning answer. My gosh, I love that answer.
Thanks.
Um, Now to take 1,000 steps back, who is the
Mhm.
story about? What's the
Yeah,
narrative? What's the story about? Yeah.
yeah. This is a first person novel that follows Kindred through a chunk of her life. So, this is a child who was born to a single mom. She has an adopted father the child is white, mixed race. Her mom is white, and her adoptive father is Black. His name is Carl. And so, this is very much about the beginning of her identity formation. And then it
Mm,
moves through her experiences. She does lose her mom early in the book. That's not a spoiler. Her mom dies of cancer, and she has to kind of make her way. Carl
mm,
encounters the justice system in a disappointing and very real way that's about racial profiling. And
mm,
so Kindred is on her own for a large chunk of time as a young person. So this book follows her development and her adventures and her kind of finding her way. And then at a certain point, her father goes missing, and she has to make some choices about what she's going to do.
mm. Lo- wow. Now, what is at stake if things go wrong?
The main thing that's always at stake is loss.
Mhm,
Sometimes it's loss via death. Sometimes it's loss via a breakup. Sometimes it's loss via someone just disappearing and not knowing whether they're still alive. These are the stakes of Kindred's life that she's handling. And I think fundamentally, the stakes cannot be higher for any of us. The stakes are always about loss. Kindred also experiences a certain amount of loss of identity around place. She
mm,
doesn't necessarily know where she's from, and so at some level, this story, even though she's a idiosyncratic and sort of odd character, she's queer and she's a sex worker and she has this like kind of non-normative early life. I think
mm,
what's deeply relatable about her story is that what she's grappling with is, have I shown people I love them, and do they love me? uh,
mm,
you know, am I connected enough to the people that I care about? Am I doing things that are meaningful to me? And do I have my integrity intact?
mm.
And I think these are questions that many of us are asking.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Now, what kind of an emotional ride can a reader anticipate?
This book is poignant. It is sometimes funny. It's odd, um, and it's unflinching in the face of real loss. So there's some confrontation with real sadness. There's also moments that are very sexy. So I think it's a pretty wild ride. I think it's a big ride. It's got
All
its ups and
right,
downs.
got it. Cool. Now, I mean, I think every author has some aspects of the story that they find really difficult to explore, really difficult to get into. What parts of this book were the hardest for you to write?
It was really difficult for me to write my way through panic. I think writing about panic is really difficult. Your language on the page, if it doesn't accurately reflect the body state of panic, I think you lose readers real quick. And so
Mm,
I find it really challenging to write about extreme body states and mind states. It's a challenge I really love. So writing about being high, right? A character who's intoxicated, who's seeing the world through sort of a scrim of
Mm,
whatever drug they're on. That's a part of this book as well. And I think writing altered states, and particularly writing very intense altered states, is really challenging, just for, my big commitment to veracity and wanting people to feel that it was real.
mm, mhm,
Emotionally, it was very challenging for me to write about the loss of Kindred's mother.
mm,
I wrote scenes with Kindred's mother that didn't make it into the book just for space. I really had a lot of compassion and sorrow about that character. And it did feel very sad. Like I said, it's not a spoiler. She dies early in the book, and it's part of the summary on the back, so it's happening. And I think there's a sadness to that, just knowing that someone is going to have a death that comes early in their life. Is There's always some real pain to that, especially
mm.
for people who may have experienced it. So that one was hard. That one was hard for me emotionally to do.
Understood. Now, where were you in your life that as this story was taking shape? And do you feel as though writing this changed you in some way? And if so, how?
That's actually a really big question for me, because when I first started working on this novel, I was very uh, freshly exiting a pretty traumatic era of my life. And so this book has a lot of the sort of raw emotional intensity of trauma in it. There's
Mhm,
several places in the book where real trauma is occurring. And so I was writing my way through my own traumatic emotions. The experiences of the book are not my experiences per se, but I will say that I was not particularly well when I first started working on the book.
mhm,
And so, yeah, the process of creating these characters, I changed a lot, and it changed me a lot. I went through a lot of learning, and I also went through a lot of self-discovery, and trying to, um, get more stable and get better over the
mm,
course of the years that I was working on this manuscript. And by the time I was ready to start sending it out, I was in a much better place. I was ready for it to be seen,
mhm,
which means I was ready for my capacity to feel pain to be seen, which
mhm,
is, that's a vulnerability as a writer, I think, to show up being like, yep, I put these things on the page because I know they're real.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I do think that writing this book had a huge impact on me, and that my life at the time informed a lot of the emotional truth of the book.
Got it. What what surprised you the most while you were writing this story?
I think I'm always surprised in fiction. I'm always surprised at how hard it is.
Oh, yeah.
I think writing fiction is just really hard, and it's awesome, and it's wonderful, and I trained for it.
Mm,
um, but I was surprised at the the length. I mean, when I first start writing fiction, I always think there's no way I'm going to be able to fill the pages. And then
mm.
when I'm completing something, I'm like, oh no, it's three times too long. So that roller coaster is very real for me. And I think I
Mhm,
was surprised when I first started working on it. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fill all these pages that I need. I don't know if it's really a novel. And then it was like, oh, I could write these characters, I could write several books of these characters.
mm,
So that investment, I take a long time to write fiction. My first novel took me 8 years. This novel
mm,
took me 6 years. I take a long time, especially novels. I have to really sink in, and I have to feel competent to the
mm,
world that I'm building. and that takes me a lot of time, perfectionism or whatnot. So I was surprised. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was really surprised at how much I wanted to include, how many scenes and details I felt compelled to create, that are not actually part of the end result of the book.
Wow. Was there a specific character? I mean, you already mentioned a few very complex characters. Was there a specific character that you found the most difficult to write and why?
I struggle to write men that are uh, worthy of compassion and connection.
Mm,
Sometimes I can write women, I can write queer people, I can write queer men, no problem, because I draw on so much of my own love for those
mhm,
characters.
mhm,
When I'm writing straight men and I want them to be on the like a good guy, I
mhm,
have to work for it.
mm,
And it's not because I have, like, I'm not a misandrist. There's lots of, like, you know there's lots of men in my life that I love very dearly. Just as a writer, it's a place where I have to really like extend myself
mm,
to write, men that you're going to love. And there's several in this book that I really love that are, based in reality, based on men that I knew at the time.
mhm,
And, but I did find them very challenging because I wanted to be true to them. I wanted to sort of, true to the vision of, these are men who are struggling, who are doing their best, who are trying to show up in a full way,
mm,
but they also have limitations, and some of those limitations are based on gender training around emotions, or gender training around, heroism.
mm.
So yeah, I think those are characters that I have to be really conscious and careful. They don't flow the way that women and trans and genderqueer characters flow for me.
Got it. Understood. Now, you've already mentioned that there are whole sections that you had taken out, right? Because
Yeah,
it was like, oh my gosh, I'm now writing a 300-page novel or 300,000 word novel.
yeah.
Were there any parts that actually were included that um, almost didn't make it in?
Yes, absolutely. I there's a section in the book that happens in New York,
Mm,
that has a lot of like rhapsodic language about a certain time and place in Brooklyn. That Brooklyn is basically gone now,
mhm,
and so I didn't. I wasn't sure about including some of this description, and what I ended up deciding was, yeah, this area is getting gentrified very quickly,
mhm,
and I think it's okay to give 5 or 10 pages of sort of non-plot to this description. So there's a few scenes that are like, is this advancing the plot? Like, no, not really. They're atmospheric, and they're
mhm,
about experiencing this time and place that existed, about 15 years ago in Brooklyn.
mm.
And so, yeah, I think there's definitely those. I'm glad they're in there. From strictly an editor's standpoint, I'm surprised they made it, but I'm glad they did.
Excellent. Now, wow, we've covered a lot. Who do you feel will actually fall the hardest for this book? Who's the most attracted to it?
Yeah, so far the people who have had the strongest response to this book are people who identify as someone who's been othered a lot in their life, right?
Mm,
So people who feel like the weird one, or people who feel like they don't belong in a lot of rooms that they're in.
mhm,
um you know the sense of non-belonging and the search for belonging is a
mhm,
big theme in Take Me With You. And so, yeah, so people who have that feeling of I mean, I know I exist, but I often feel like I have to assert my existence because there's not clear spaces for me. It's not
Mm,
obvious for me where I belong. So I think yeah, feelings of non-belonging have led to pretty strong responses, and also just people who identify with some of the experiences. So, I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who have lived experience in sex work, and queer people, and people who have lived experience of homelessness, people who have lived experience of loss of a parent. I've definitely received real response from those folks. Um, Lived experience of having a loved one in prison.
mm,
You there's sort of there's a cinematic way that people write about prison, and you can
mm,
kind of tell from 100 yards if they've ever actually been inside a prison.
mm,
And if they've never visited anyone in prison or they've never been incarcerated, you can tell because the way prisons operate in media is just very, very different from how they operate for real. And
mm.
so, people who have that lived experience I've also had that reaction of just like, thank you for writing a real prison visiting room. So yeah, I think there's unrepresented experiences that are in this book. Like there's people in this book who are showing up, who are doing things that oftentimes we just feel like the way it gets represented is sort of sensationalized or not that realistic. And so having these slivers of realism, um, I think people have really responded to that, and I hope continue to respond to that. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Now, is there anything that readers have come to you and said, you know what, I totally was not expecting that?
I don't think I can answer that question without giving away plot. So
Okay, all right.
yeah, I'll just say yes. There are things that people are surprised by. Um, there's things that people are surprised by in the book. I think it has several surprises in it. I can tell you one that doesn't give away a ton of plot,
Okay.
which is that there's a character in the book who sort of falls for Scientology, and a lot of people didn't see that coming.
Got it. Well, okay, I could see that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, let's say someone they pick it up and they dive into the first 20 pages. What makes them say, "Oh my gosh, I have got to keep reading this"?
Mm. I think the first 20 pages really offer a portrait of a very interesting, cool kid that
Mm,
is going to grow into a really interesting adult. And so
okay.
that those first pages is where you meet Kindred as a young person. And it's like, whoa, how this kid is thinking really interesting thoughts.
Okay.
And the family that she's in is unique. And so, yeah, I think just getting sort of embedded immediately with a character who is unique like that. I mean, that's what draws me in, and that's what I try to do as a writer.
Understood. Now, is there a specific mood that you recommend folks are in when they pick up the story?
A mood. I can say that this book is uh, it doesn't pull any punches. So,
Mhm.
this isn't a book to read if what you really need is to be watching Great British Baking Show. Like, if what your heart needs is like very low stakes people making muffins, like this book is not that.
Oh my gosh, that's the best answer ever. Um, in one sentence, can you like give that log line, that one sentence description of the story?
Hmm. Yeah. I'm so terrible at that, and I should just be reading it. I should just be reading it off the back of the book.
I was gonna say then
Um,
two sentences. Two sentences.
yeah. This is a book about a young energetic, interesting queer sex worker who's navigating relationships, family, grief,
Mm.
financial issues, and eventually has to confront her beliefs and her values when her dad goes missing.
Wow. Fabulous. Now, is there anything that you want to talk about or that we should chat on before we like tie things up?
Mm. Yes, I'm so excited because the audiobook is happening. It's happening. It's happening. And I think we are in good shape for it to be happening in 2026. So
Mm,
yeah, so people who, would rather have the auditory experience of reading fiction, which I respect, and I'm one of you.
mm.
I'm just so grateful that we're going to be doing the audiobook of Take Me With You. That's a great a great excitement for me.
Oh, excellent. Yes. And I'm so looking forward to that. So that's amazing, amazing, amazing.
Yay.
And I also want to mention that for the month of March, Take Me With You, the audiobook version, or not audiobook, duh, the ebook version is on sale for 99 cents in honor of Women's History Month. So
Yay.
yay! So if you want to explore, definitely go pick up the ebook. Again, 99 cents only until the end of March. And with that, Vanessa, as always, it is such a distinct pleasure to have an opportunity to sit down and chat. And thank you again for writing such a fantastic story.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad we did this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.